computer. Bingo. So today's another good day because John Mattox is alive and well and kicking, and here we are, calculating and tracking turnover. Yeah?
Yeah. Thanks for being here, Doug, and for hosting this for us. We're going to continue our series called Know Your Numbers. It's a webcast, and we're talking about HR data literacy. And we're on series 1.4. We're going to talk about calculating and tracking turnover. And the reason we're going here is because we talked about turnover last time, desirable turnover, undesirable turnover, and I realized, well, we never talked about turnover in general. So let's start there.
And it's a key variable that everybody's dealing with in the pandemic.
No doubt. No doubt.
Always has.
So if you haven't seen us before, here's a quick introduction. We talk about building data literacy, mostly for HR professionals, but for anyone who wants to listen, 3 to 5 minutes on the webinar, data-rich content. I'm John Mattox. You also see Doug Gray on screen. We're from Action Learning Associates. And when these get posted, we hope that you ask questions, post your reactions, share examples of how you might do it better. So just enter the community and conversation. So let's get started here. So what is turnover? Well, turnover is often represented as a percentage of the current number of employee population that is leaving the organization. That's good. That's just a general understanding of it, right? But the reality is, the technicality of it is that it's not just the departure number of employees, but it's also replacement. And it's most often represented as a rate or a percentage.
So let me get this right. It's the direct cost of the person who's leaving and the cost to train them when they return?
Nope, it's actually just the straight numbers of people leaving. And then also you want not just the people leaving, but people coming in, because your denominator in this, we'll get to this in a second, fluctuates. It's not always flat. So we need to account for who's leaving, who's coming in, all of that.
As well as who's full-time and who's variable.
And right now we're just talking about full-time, but you can do this for part-time as well.
Okay.
So no cost involved yet, but that's what we talked about, I think, last time. Yeah, we did do that last time. Okay. All right, so conceptually, the calculation is simple. The parting number of employees divided by all employees times 100, that gives you a percentage. So in this case, 10 divided by 100 times 100 is 10%.
I can follow this one. That's pretty simple. All right. Woo-hoo.
All right. So then reality comes in the form of the complexity of the organization and timing. So let's take a look a little differently. Let's take a look at turnover per business unit and the business unit on a monthly basis. And then all employees in the business unit during that same month. So numbers might be 9 over 100 times 100 equals 9%. And maybe it's 9 because maybe one of those 10 that we talked about before was turned over the month before.
Okay, still good. Got it.
Okay. So another variation here would be, well, maybe since we're losing 9 people, we actually have to take into account the fact that we lost those 9 in our denominator. So we're not at 100 anymore, we're at 99 or 91. So if we adjust the numbers, our rate is now 9.8%.
Mm-hmm.
Simple math, but it's a matter of what you put in and why you put it in. Now, that's the reality, but what's commonly used for a calculation for turnover is what we're seeing right here. And that is the parting number of employees in the business unit in a given month. And then here's the complexity of the formula. It's actually pretty simple, but it's all employees in the business unit at the beginning of the month, plus all employees of the business unit at the end of the month divided by 2. So we're just taking the average of beginning employees, end of the month employees, taking the average.
So that makes sense, especially when people are coming and going so much, or they're stepping aside because they're collecting unemployment checks and they're making more money there than they would be if they were a direct employee. So one of the big questions that I'm hearing now is, when should I return and how? How many people should return? So this bottom number, what do you call it? Denominator?
The denominator, yep.
Yep, will reflect that average. I get you.
It takes into account that flux of people moving in, moving out. So numbers wise, 10 divided by 100 plus 90 divided by 2, that's 95. So 10 divided by 95 times 100 is 10.5%. Mm-hmm. So that's the most common calculation, the approach for more complex organizations. So we've covered the calculations. That's good stuff. Now, where do we go with this? What should you be doing with this? Because you're not usually looking at one number for your organization in a given month. What I would recommend is that, let's say you're looking at different business units, and we have 3 reflected here: Unit A, Unit B, and Unit C. Those are the rows. And then we're looking at them on a monthly basis. Mm-hmm. So January through December for a given year. So Doug, you're a numbers wizard.
No.
What's this say? Does this make sense to you?
Yeah, generally it's just a bunch of numbers. Here's the data, but it doesn't mean anything yet. So keep going.
Okay, so simple
Ooh.
recommendation, take your data and graph it. So what we see is that business unit A starts at about 10%, and over time throughout the year, turnover rises to about 15%. You might think, that's not too bad, but an increase of 5% from 10%, that's a 50% increase. Something is not going right here.
Or something's going very right, like a seasonal response or a new launch in that unit that happened in June and July. They ramped up and
Yeah,
they carry on.
absolutely. It could be part of the business plan. But if you don't know the business plan and you don't know your numbers and you're not tracking against it, who knows what's going on,
Oh, you
right?
got to know your numbers. You kind of slipped that in there. I like that. Know your numbers.
Know your
Measure,
numbers.
monitor. Okay.
So
The
if you
green.
look at business unit B,
Yep.
it's going down. Turnover is going down. So let's assume that turnover in this case is bad. They want to retain enough people. Turnover is going down, which is a good thing. What are they doing? How are they retaining people? Great questions to ask. And again, we're looking at a 50% decrease. That's fantastic. So
If
whatever's
it's
being done
desirable,
here,
if it's desirable. I just got off the line with somebody who has a business with employees as well as um, what do you call them, temps, and he's in software. So of course he's got a lot of people with flexible hours. For him, that decrease is a way to mitigate risk, or because he doesn't have a client need over time, he can let those people go without any direct costs.
perfect. So you have to know your context in order to make meaning out of these numbers. The last line looks like normal fluctuation, but it's average, it's changing per month. If you don't know what's expected, you don't want to know whether this is what you want, what
Right.
you need, or what's just happening.
I get it so far. Woohoo!
All right, great. Well, the good part is we're at the end here.
Oh, yay.
Turnover is a bit more difficult to calculate than we expected at first.
All right.
We went through those numbers, but generally it's not hard. Now, here's the twist. Retention is a variation of turnover. You want to retain your employees. You don't want to lose them to turnover. Whatever is the most important metric for your organization, use that.
And it might depend on the business. Yep.
Certainly does. So measure turnover across your business units, not just once a month or not just once, but do it throughout the year. Graph your data when you have them so you can see patterns.
That really worked well for me.
And then lastly, measure, monitor, manage means
Measure, monitor, manage. I know how to do that.
when you get your data, make sure you talk to your stakeholders, compare it to expectations. And if it's not meeting your expectations, figure out how are you going to manage? What are you going to do to solve this problem with your business unit?
I'm going to hire John. Is that your
Thanks,
next
Doug.
slide? Is there a slide in there that says hire John and call here?
It says hire Doug. It's right here, Action Learning Associate.
And then I'll say, talk to John. All right.
Okay.
On that good note,
See ya. Bye, folks.